Hello and welcome to another card review for the Saviors of Uldum expansion. First up we have Diseased Vulture, 4 mana 3/5 Warlock Beast, where after your hero takes damage on your turn, summon a random 3-cost minion. I think that's pretty good. 4 mana for a 3/5 minion is a really solid stat line, and the fact that it's only 4 mana means you could probably combo this with some other spell or card in order to guarantee that you at least get one random 3-drop. Quickly looking over, we have cards like Spirit Bomb, which could be kind of effective for this. Hellfire kind of counters the whole summon a 3-drop thing. What else? We got like cards like Flame Imp, and I think there's some other damaging minions over here. I think Diseased Vulture has a lot of promise. There is some varying power level to a 3-drop. Every once in a while you'll get something like a voodoo doll off of this card, and that's not very good. But I think for the most part a 3-drop can be a really valuable minion. So if you're already going to use a card that ends up damaging your own hero, comboing it on the same turn with Diseased Vulture, I think makes it work. With enough self-damaging cards, or even on turn 6 with your hero power just tapping, I think Diseased Vulture can consistently work, and I think it's definitely going to see play. Next up is Infested Ritualist, 2 mana 2/3 neutral minion with the battlecry restore adjacent minions to full health. This is actually a deceptively powerful card. If you have any big minions out on the board, then you can make trades that maybe put them at low health, and then just play Infested Ritualist right next to it. It's pretty useful. I definitely see this being a good card in Arena. Having minions survive out on the board and having this tempo is really powerful. I think in a Lucent Bark Druid deck, this would really work out well. If you have another Lucent Bark, you could heal that up to full health and then summon your other one back. Or if you have just 2 minions and you restore 5 health in total, then you could awaken them again. I think it's a good card in terms of tempo, but I don't know how much ladder play it's going to see unless it plays into a certain archetype. It may not see any play at all. Next up we have Into the Fray, 1 mana warrior card, give all taunt minions in your hand +2/+2. We have another taunt hand buffing warrior card. The main problem I have with this card and the cards that hand buff taunt minions is currently, are there any taunt cards specifically for warrior? You have to go with some neutral taunt minions, which I think there are some good ones. Rotten Applebomb's decent, Witchwood Grizzly, Ziliax, Safeguard's kind of good, but there's no real incentive to play those cards unless it's anti-aggro. And hand buffing +2/+2 to taunt cards is really powerful, but I still think there needs to be more taunt cards in order for Into the Fray and other taunt hand buffing minions to actually work. Another issue I have with this deck is that I think a control shaman, with the amount of removal that they've got in this expansion and all the removal they already have, I think just spamming your board with big taunt minions isn't going to work against that, and it's going to be a super hard counter. I don't think one certain deck would be able to destroy another one completely from the meta, but I think it is important to note that this deck can be hard countered by just another deck that has a bunch of removal. Next up is Basalt Warbringer, 9 mana 9/6 neutral minion with the death rattle, give all minions in your hand +3/+3. 9 mana for a 9/6 is not a good stat line. It's severely understated, but the idea is with this death rattle, you can buff your hand quite a bit. The fact that it's a death rattle means in Rogue, you could play this as a 1 mana 1/1. In Priest, you could resummon it or shuffle 1/1 copies in your deck. You can also play Undasta to get this death rattle back. So I think initially when you play this card, it is going to be a weak play, and on its own, it's a really weak card. But because of all of the death rattle synergies, I think you're going to be able to trigger this death rattle 2, 3, 4, 5 times, depending how long the game goes. It's a powerful death rattle card that I think certain classes will be able to take advantage of. It really depends just how slow the meta is, I think, because this is a pretty weak turn 9 play. If anything, I think Rogue with Enka the Buried might be able to use it. It just might not be part of their game plan if they're doing a Mechathune deck. Whether it's competitive or not, I think it's a really cool card and one that I would love to make some meme deck with, where you just play a bunch of cheap charge minions that have been buffed to hell with this card. Next up is Infested Goblin, 3 mana 2/3 neutral minion with taunt and death rattle. add 2 1/1 scarabs with taunt to your hand. This isn't a terrible card. Obviously 3 mana for 2/3 isn't that great, but it is really annoying. This is one of those taunt minions that I was talking about that a taunt warrior would need in order to get some hand buffing. And this one's pretty good. You could either buff this, or you could play this in the early game and then get the 2 1/1s and buff 2 separate minions. That brings them up to 1 mana 3/3s with taunt, which is pretty good. It's an okay card. I think it would really only work for that certain archetype, and I'm not fully convinced that a buffing taunt warrior is gonna work. But yeah, it's a cool idea. Next up we have Frightened Flunky. 2 mana 2/2 warrior minion with taunt and battle cry. Discover a taunt minion. I don't think it's quite as good as Stonehill Defender. Obviously it has the same battle cry, which I think a lot of people enjoyed because it was a taunt minion that you would get another taunt minion from, and it was a very anti-aggro card that was also really powerful. Even though this is 1 less mana, the 2/2 body just isn't as good. The difference between your opponent dealing 2 and 4 damage is a lot different, and they're not gonna have to do a lot in order to get rid of Frightened Flunky. With that said though, I still think it's a pretty good card. It's a super easy turn 2 play that adds value to your hand, and likely you'll be able to discover a taunt minion that you could use to combat whatever sort of deck you're playing against at the time. So maybe a cheaper taunt minion against an aggro deck, or a more expensive and powerful taunt minion against a control deck. I like how they made this card specifically for warrior, that way you don't see it in every single deck. Maybe I'm just used to the good old days and I prefer Stonehill Defender, but I think Frightened Flunky is not that much worse and it could definitely see play. Next up is Wasteland Assassin, 5 mana 4/2 minion with stealth and reborn. Yeah, this is one of those reborn cards that I don't think will really work. 5 mana for 4/2 is obviously bad. The stealth helps the chance of this minion surviving, but if your opponent has some sort of board clear, there's ways to get around stealth, and dealing 2 damage isn't that difficult. Also, the reborn isn't amazing. I kind of get where they're going with this. You would play it, next turn you attack, and then it's reborn into a 4/1 minion with stealth. So in a way, it's almost like a Rager that comes back to life. I think the stats are just too poor on this minion, the cost is too high, the reborn isn't as useful. I get where they were going with this card, but I think it's a pack filler, it's not going to see any play. Well, there you have it, those were the cards for today. I'm also going to put out the other episode of like the first 15 cards that I didn't put out a video yet for, and then tomorrow we have a pony. So that's something to look forward to. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and until next time, ta-ta.